Good morning to all of you. How are you? I hope all of you are fit and fine. Today we are going to revise figure of speech. And this thing I hope that you have read earlier also. So we are going to revise this figure of speech and we will see the questions also which will be based on this figure of speech. First of all, I will try to explain the figure of speech. Okay. After that, I will give you example. After example, I will give you some questions based on figure of speech. Okay. First figure of speech is simile. Okay, first word is simile. And what simile mean? In a simile, a comparison is made between two objects. In simile, a comparison is made between two objects in a simile. A comparison is made between two objects between two different objects. This thing is most important. Not between two objects, but between two different objects. Suppose I say that hold two chalk, and you say that I am doing comparison between these two. Then that thing is not good. Because in this simile, you have to do a comparison. And that comparison is of two different objects which have at least one point in common. Okay. Simile. In simile, a comparison is made. You are comparing between two different objects. In simile, a comparison is made between two different objects. Means both objects should be different. Not that you are taking the same thing in one hand and same thing in the other hand, and then you are comparing that. Yes, I am comparing this duster with the other duster. Suppose you have to compare a lion and a human being, a man. Then you can say that I am comparing between two different objects. Because tiger is an animal and the human being is a man. So you are comparing a man with the tiger. And similarly, what tells us, and when you are comparing between two different objects, at least one point in common. One point should be common. When you are comparing a man with a tiger, then one comparison is done with the other thing. One thing is common is that tiger is also brave and that man is also a brave. This is the point. This is the one point. This is the one point. One point in common. Suppose you are comparing a lion with a man. Suppose Ram. Okay. Suppose you are comparing lion with Ram. Ram is a human being and lion is an animal. Okay. Then we are comparing two different objects. Lion and Ram, which have at least, and both have at least one point in common. Both have at least one point in common, that both are brave, courageous. Brave or courageous. Or you can say that strong. Okay. Brave or courageous or strong. This thing is the common thing. This is the point which is common between lion and the man. Then we will say that simile figure of speech is used. Suppose we have to frame a sentence in which you are using a simile. Then what you will say? Ram is like a lion. Then what you will say? Wait. All of you have noted this. Now I am going to rub this, okay? Suppose we have to frame a sentence in which you are using simile figure of speech. Suppose Ram is like a lion. Then which figure of speech we have used? We have used simile figure of speech. We have used simile figure of speech. Ram is a different thing and lion is a different thing, and we are comparing with Ram and lion. And which word is telling that? Which word gives you knowledge that this sentence consists of figure of speech. This word, like is the word which tells you that Ram and Lion have one thing in a common. One point in common is that Ram is like Lion. Here he is not saying Ram is Lion. Here it is said that Ram is like. It is assumed that Ram have courage like lion. Ram have energy like lion. That's why we will say that this word like gives us knowledge that this sentence consists of simile figure of speech. Okay. Now this concept is clear. One thing you have to keep in mind that see in your exam, this clear concept will help you to solve the questions. Not only for your exam, for your board exam, or for class 11 or 12. This figure of speech will help you entire life. Or we can say that this figure of speech gives you confidence. In what sense? This will give confidence while your conversation with other person. When you use these ornamental words, then the person who is standing before you, the person who is conversing with you, will get the knowledge that yes, this person has good command, or we can say that person has a clear concept of figure of speech. So, understood this figure of speech in a clear sense, in an original sense. Okay. What the word simile means? Simile means a comparison between two different objects. Means this object, suppose this is, both things should be different. A comparison between two different objects which have at least one point in common. Means when you are comparing the two different things, you should notice that one point should be common between both the things. Then you will use the simile figure of speech. Okay, like here, Ram is like a lion. One thing is common is that Ram is brave like a lion. Then it is said that Ram is like. This word also helps you to identify a particular sentence, that whether that sentence is simile or not. Okay. One more example you can take. The soul was like a star. Thy soul was like. This word gives you knowledge or not, that your soul was like a star. The soul was like a star. Soul which you have never seen. Am I right? Anyone has seen that soul? No one has seen the soul. Because it is assumed that After death, this soul comes out. And when you are living, when you are alive, this soul is present inside you. It is said that no one has seen. So, it is said that thy soul was like a star. Means one thing is common between thy soul and star is that it is said that both things are calm and quiet, and means this is the quality, this is the likeness that both are silent, both things live in peace. That's why it is said that thy soul was like a star. And in this we have seen that figure of speech is used. Which figure of speech? Simply figure of speech is used. Okay. Now next figure of speech is metaphor. Next figure of speech is metaphor. 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 Second figure of speech is metaphor. A metaphor is a comparison. In this also there is a comparison. A metaphor is a comparison between two different objects. Metaphor is a comparison between two objects Metaphor is a comparison between two different objects. Two different objects. Not two objects, means two different objects. Comparison between two different objects. Comparison between two different objects. But the words of comparison the words of comparison. What are the words of comparison? So, like these words will not be used. The words of comparison, like so, like. The words of comparison are so, like, are not used. Are not used. The words of comparison so, like are not used. Thus, we can say that metaphor is an implied simile. Thus, we can say that metaphor is an implied simile. Thus, we can say that metaphor is an implied simile. Okay. Thus, we can say that metaphor is an implied simile. Implied simile means the simile which is not being seen, which you cannot use in the original sense. The sentence in which you will not use the word of comparison. In this metaphor, two words you have to keep in mind, that words of comparison. Words of comparison. Words of comparison. So, words of comparison. So and like will not be used. Then you have to say that this sentence is an metaphor sentence. This sentence consists of metaphor, figure of speech. Okay. Thus we will know that metaphor is a comparison between two different objects. In the simile also two different objects. In this also two different objects. But the words of comparison so like are not used. Okay. We will keep in our mind that in this figure of speech, the words of comparison, two words are there, so and like. The words of comparison will not be used. Thus, it is said that metaphor is an implied simile. Note down the example. Note down an example for this question. Like you can say that example. Love is the spice of life. Love is the spice of life. Okay. Love is the spice of life. Means love and life both are different things. But how love is like spice. Whenever this type of question comes, then you ask question by yourself. Love is what type of life? Then answer is love is like a spice of life. Means you have to answer your own question. That love is like spice. Means this word like is not used. Means metaphor. Second example is revenge is a kind of wild justice. Revenge and justice both are different things, but revenge is a kind of wild justice.